In his best-selling book, Last Child in the Woods, Richard Louv's effort to reconnect kids to the natural world sparked an intense national debate. He influenced regional and national policy throughout North America and coined the term nature deficit disorder, which inspired campaigns in more than 90 cities. But his work is not done yet, and he's here with us today. Thanks for coming, Richard.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks for stopping by. This nature deficit disorder, what's that all about?
Well, first, it's not a known medical diagnosis, just to make that clear. I'm very careful about that in both books to make that clear. It is, though, a phrase that the first book came out in 2005. We didn't really have a language to talk about this thing that was happening, that we had a feeling that there was this profound change in the relationship between children and nature, and the rest of us too, but it was mainly in our kids that we saw it. And so that phrase, I think, caught on, and that's what people talk about when they talk about the disconnection from nature. And again, I think one of the things I learned after the book came out is that I would give speeches around the country, and over again, there would be an adult who would either stand up, or like one woman in Seattle, I was signing books at a table, and she reached down and literally grabbed me by the lapels and pulled me up and says, "Rich, listen to me. Adults have nature deficit disorder too. You got to write a book about that."
Wow.
And I said, "Let me go."
Sounds like she had rage as well.
Yeah. So, but she was right, and so Last Child in the Woods is about kids, and the nature principles more about the rest of us.
So what are some of the symptoms of this nature deficit disorder? How do I know if I have it?
It's not so much that, it's a diagnosable as you have these twitches and stuff that happen. It's really almost more of a deficit, a disorder of the society. The way I often answer that question is I say that, when you start to look at the research that finally started coming out in the last 10, 15 years, it's been terribly understudied, the impact of the natural world on human development, whether you're a kid or an adult. But this research is suggesting kids who have the symptoms of attention deficit disorder, those symptoms get much better with just a little bit of contact with nature. And they're studying urban kids in Chicago. We tend to think better and be more creative, both adults and kids. Quite a few studies have shown that. It affects our productivity when we get more nature in our lives. It affects our mental health. Most of the research, in fact, on health has been on mental health. There's some on physical health. But that kind of seems obvious. If you got out more, that's a good antidote to obesity, et cetera. But the mental health thing is really interesting, and there's a lot of movement toward now actually prescribing outdoor time, prescribing nature time for mental health issues as well as physical health.
So is there a sense of urgency here?
I think there is. I like to think of this as the bookend issue to climate change. We're not going to do a lot about one of those issues if we don't do something about the other, that they really are related in a sense. It doesn't always work out, but more activity in nature when you're a kid, if you develop that sense of awe and wonder, then you're far more likely, in most cases, to really care about the environment later. What if that virtually disappears? Where will future stewards of the earth come from?
So what do we do if, I'm attached to my BlackBerry and I'm watching TV and, is there any advice for someone who is kind of attached to all these things?
I think it's a mistake to demonize electronics, whether it's our phones or whether it's video games for kids. And again, this affects adults as much as kids. What if we combine the benefits of being outdoors in nature to our minds, to our ability to learn and create and all that, with the benefits that do come to some degree from electronics? And that's the hybrid mind.
Now, for most of us who live in urban city centers, to get this nature feeling, do I have to go out into the woods, or is there a way that I could do it closer to where I live?
I make the case in the nature principle, and also in Last Child in the Woods, that nearby nature is as important to human beings as wilderness. A lot of it is simply the environment you're in. Again, it doesn't have to be Yosemite. It can be the clump of trees at the end of the cul-de-sac if they're valued and if they're kept. So I make the argument in the nature principle that conservation is no longer enough. We need to conserve everything we can, but now we need to start creating nature. And I know that sounds strange.
So what does like a vision of the future look like to you?
And it's not easy to answer, obviously. I had to write a whole book to do that. But I often, when I speak around the country, I often, for the last few years, have said, you know, Martin Luther King said and demonstrated in many ways that any movement, any culture will fail if it cannot paint a picture of a world that people will want to go to. You know, as others have said, his speech was not called "I Have a Nightmare."
That's true.
And he really painted a picture. And at the time, we didn't know if we'd get there. And he didn't either. So I think that environmentalism has to kind of evolve. And that there are a lot of other movements out there that are working in parallel to organic farming, urban agriculture, biophilic design, which has to do with using nature in the design of buildings and neighborhoods. Workplaces that have more nature woven into them. The studies show that the workers are more productive, sick time gets better, turnover gets better.
Yeah, I mean, they do a study, best places to work on Outside Magazine, and the ones that usually rank in the top 10, you know, they have all those things you just mentioned incorporated into their daily work life.
Right, and the schools are the same. Our neighborhoods, our houses, and I have a section in the nature principle about our houses, how we can change our backyards, our houses to make them have more nature, more biophilic. So the vision of the world I have, and I'm trying to develop in more detail, is very different from the dominant image. I've been thinking lately that I think perhaps most, certainly many Americans, when they think about the future, when they're asked to conjure up images of the future, the far future, quickly, don't sit down and think about it, just what do you see? And they see Blade Runner. They see images of Mad Max, you know, in which nature's been stripped from us, or humanity has been stripped from us. If I'm right, and if that's the dominant image in people's minds, then we're in trouble, because even more than we know. Because, you know, be careful what you wish for, you just might get it. Be careful what you imagine, you just might get it. Right now, I don't think our society has an alternative vision that we want to go to. And I think nature is the key to that vision. If we renatured our cities, if we created nature where there hasn't been nature in hundreds of years, and this isn't just restoring a vacant lot, this is green roofs, it's a new kind of architecture, new kind of urban design, which isn't actually so new. It's something we've known for a long time but forgot. Instead, we've been moving the opposite direction. Schools have been canceling field trips, they've been canceling recess. In the 70s, we started building schools with no windows. So I think that we can move in a very different direction, and we can start now to paint that picture of a world that we do want to go to.
Well, I love there's a sense of optimism. You know, you're not just, as you said, you're creating the dream of where we could be going, and just listening to you makes me want to get outside and enjoy nature. So thank you for being here.
You're welcome.
You're watching Outside Today exclusively on Outside Television.